Hey guys, it's Duel here, and today I wanted to talk to you about the current season of Diablo 4, and that is season 5. And so this video is really going to be for you if you're just wanting to jump in and figure out, how do I navigate a build, how do I pick a build, and to level up as fast as possible so that you can get the best build, or I guess they call it the meta, so you can blast and feel really strong and powerful. So, full disclaimer before we jump into this, I just want to let you all know that I am not a god at the game. I'm not a pro by any means. I don't theory craft. I don't do any of that. If you want to check out more people that do that, please check out Raxantarax or Woody Joe. Those guys are professionals at theory crafting and they know all the best builds. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. This video is about you just want to jump in and you want to learn. And so I'm going to try to break this down as easy as possible. So, for an example, the best build in the game for the season is the Sorcerer. And so let's say if you're watching this and Season 5 is over, there will be a different build that is the best in the game. Like Sorcerer is not going to reign supreme forever. But for the example and purpose of this video, we're just going to say it's the Sorcerer. So it could be any build, right? But let's say you're picking the Sorcerer, and so if you click on build guides, you can see all the different builds here, and they have like filters. And I know that a lot of this can be kind of overwhelming, and I'm just going to walk you through what I do and the simplest way that I follow it. And this is how I've been able to navigate it. Like I said, I'm not a pro, not an expert, but I've known enough to get by, right? So that's what this video is for. So we have a couple of filters here. We got leveling, we got endgame, and we got specialized. I actually don't know what specialized is, so we're going to ignore that for now. But for leveling, we're going to talk about that in a second, and I'll explain why here in a minute. So first, you want to decide what endgame build you want to pick. And what this means is once you hit level 50 and you have all of your Paragon points, this is where you want to look. So I think these are in alphabetical order and not by tier. So usually what I do is I go over to the tier list. And this is updated every season by the Maxroll team. Huge shout out to them, by the way, for this whole site and everything. And so really it just depends on what you're trying to do. Do you like killing bosses? And you want to look at the bosses tier list. If you want to do nightmare and dungeons and glyph leveling, this is the tier list for you. So the builds that I usually watch when I play the next season, like right off the bat, is the endgame and pit push. That's usually one that I click on. So I click on this and I go through here, and they update this pretty frequently. And they have like a legend over here on the left, and I'll get through that in a minute. But basically, it's a legend, right? So as you can see here, we have all the builds. S through D is as low as it goes, and then this is important, the change log, so you can see what they've changed. If they added or changed some builds or moved or lowered, they usually go here if that happens. And also you can see here with these arrows, that means that they've been either they're better than what was anticipated when the season started, or it's not as good. So anyway, back to what we're talking about here. So what they haven't done is updated the best build in the game right now, which is Lightning Spear Sorcerer. So if you click on Lightning Spear Sorcerer, click on this guy, and this is the guide. And also in the top left right away, you want to notice who made the build. So, and they stream, like if you click this guy's link, it'll take him to his Twitch stream. And that's good if you want to ask questions. But anyway, if you just want to jump right in and get into the meat and potatoes of it, you click on a build, and we're going to say Lightning Spear Sorcerer. And of course, there's like so much information here, like, oh my god, so what is all this? All these words, I don't want to read all. Oh my god, what is all this? What is all this? This is so much. What am I supposed to do? This is so overwhelming. And okay, so really, you don't really even need to read it. I mean, yes, you definitely should read it. You definitely should, to get understanding. And sometimes what they'll do is, and there's not one for this one, so it's a bad example, but they'll put videos in there so you can see like gameplay of the build, and you can go, oh, I don't like this build. But so for me, when I jump into the build, the first thing I look at is this. The difficulty is easy to play. Great. Speed farming, amazing. The pit, amazing. Bossing, amazing. Defense, not amazing, but it's pretty good, right? So this for me personally is when I decide, okay, I like this build. I don't like builds that are hard to play because they're hard in the hand, Who wants that? And so then at the very start of this guide, you scroll down and it shows like the character, and it's got all these, all these items. And these are mostly, I am 99% sure that this is the end game build. So you don't want to look at this right away because you don't really know what you're picking, what you're specking into. So what you want to go do is go to the end game and end game gear and skill progression, and it'll take you down here and it'll tell you all these aspects that you want to get. And we'll get to all that in a minute. If you want to read through that, you definitely can. But here's the most important part that I go through. So they show you the starter equipment that you can use for the build. Not necessary because in my opinion, you shouldn't do this because you'll be leveling so quick that your gear will get replaced very quickly. You can do this though. This is not. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I don't do this. So leveling to 100, this you can definitely do. However, for this build, I would not do this. Because you need this unique for this build. And so you do have to do a little bit of reading, but this is where the meat and potatoes of picking a build, an end game build, comes from. And then what you want to click on is end game in the pit. Now this is the most important thing. So this is what I do. I look at what are the uniques that I need to go farm, and they tell you what uniques you need to go get, obviously, and going through each of these items and their stats are very, very important. Now, like I said, there's a lot of information that I just went through. I'm trying to get through this as quick as possible, but also point out, the most important stuff here. So if you go through each item here, you see all the different stats, right? And oh my God, there's so many uniques. How am I ever going to get these uniques? This is crazy. That's fine. Just, as you level up, you will get uniques. You might not get the ones you want right away, and then you can farm them later once you get to 100. But the point is you need to get through this. And this is what I do next, and this is very important. So if you're playing on PC and you have a second monitor, highly recommend. And if you don't have a second monitor, that's fine. It just helps a lot. Start up a notepad and do this. This is what I do for every single season, and it works every single time. So you write out the helm and you put the aspect, so you know what aspect that you need. Then you put the main stats that you need. So when you get a full inventory of legendaries, you can search for these. So helm needs mana per second, int, cooldown reduction. And you can just immediately look at this notepad and side by side the items that you have in your inventory and go, oh, I only need 2 out of these, right? I only need 2 of these, so I can re-roll the last one at the Oculus or the Enchanter, whatever you want to call it. Let's say I need cooldown reduction. Well, cooldown reduction, I don't have it, but I have these 2 stats. So all I need to do is roll this one. And then I put a little dash underneath it. These are the tempers that I need. Now, with tempering, you can brick your item, but that's fine. If you either brick it and use it, or if it's so bad, you just hold on to what you're using now, and then you find the next item that has these exact same stats with the exact same rolls, and then you temper it again and see if you can get the tempers. But I do this for every single item. So helm, snowveil, chest, and I do it in order of inventory from left to right. Gloves, pants, boots, staff, amulet, ring 2, and then if it's barb, this list is way longer. But anyway, this is exactly what I do. And so basically what I do is you push this to the side here, and then let's say I'm going through my inventory. Now look, I have notepad up, and let's say you're not using a computer, maybe you're a console gamer. Pull out your phone and write this stuff down. So when you're sorting through your inventory, you just have your phone out and you're just looking through all of the stuff that you need. So then when you're going through bunches and bunches of legendaries, you know what stats you need, and you're not just sitting here guessing, right? And so this is the fastest way that I've learned without having to read a bunch of information in these guides. And I'm not discrediting what this put in the guides, but the video is for people who just don't know, like, oh my God, this stuff is so overwhelming and they don't want to read it. They don't have time. They just want to get in there and blast. This is the fastest way to do it. So now that you've picked an endgame gear guide, an endgame build, right? You've got your notepad for your endgame stuff. Then we're going to go back to tier lists. We're going to go back to leveling, like we mentioned earlier. So you go to leveling, and they do the same thing. Very good, by the way. Very organized, very well. And they explain, why they rank the builds the way that they rank them. And so you got S tier, A tier, B tier, just like previously mentioned. And so I have a sorcerer, but I'm going to start a druid now. What's the best build for druid? Well, if you look here, and this is a good example. See the down arrow? It means they took it down 1 tier. It's not as good as it was last season. And this is all on the precursor that the builds that they have here now were here last season, and they change it over time, right? That's how it goes. And so this season Pulverized just isn't as good, and this season Companion is a little better. So if I were to start a Druid, which I already have, I'm gonna go up here. I don't see any S tier, so I go down. Okay, what's A tier? Lightning Storm Druid. Great. Click on Lightning Storm Druid. Here's my lightning leveling guide, and here's all the items. And again, you can scroll down towards gear progression and global stat properties. And sorry, that's not the one. You want to go to, no, that's the right one. I'm looking for endgame, but it's not here because it's not an endgame build. But anyway, so you do the same thing. You pull out your notepad or you pull out your phone. You pull up each item, write down helm, and then you write the aspect that you need, so that when you're literally just blasting dungeons and you're blasting items, you're blasting Hilltide, you're getting these inventory items. You're getting, oh look, I need what is this one? Hood of the Protector. So if you the Protector is the or Steadfast of the Protector. I'm sorry, Protector is the aspect, right? Steadfast Tunic of Might. Might is the aspect here. So if you get a good might roll, you just know immediately, oh, I need that. I need to go salvage that so I can get a better roll on in my Codex of Power, right? And so that's how that works. And so again, let's recap real quick. You pick an endgame build. You go over to maxroll.gg. You go to tier lists. You go to endgame. You pick if you want, I pick an S tier because I like. Sometimes I don't. Maybe I'll go A tier depending on the build because I usually pick what's strong but also fun. Now, there are definitely builds that are not as fun but they're really strong, or there's builds that are really fun but not as strong. And so a good example of that, if you played Season 2, was the Ball Lightning Sorcerer. It was very strong, insanely strong. In fact, it was actually broken. It was a buggy build. But it was very boring to play because you just right-click or you press one button and you're killing everything in the game. And so that's an example of a boring but fun build. So anyway, you go in here, you pick your endgame build, and then you say, okay, once you picked your endgame build, Firebolt Sort Guide, you go to Gear and Stat Requirements, and this one does not have an endgame section, but that's okay. So this one is actually a little different now that I'm looking at this. So this might not be a good example because I don't see an endgame section here. So that's interesting. So let's click on a different build. So let's do Chain Lightning. So Chain Lightning's good because it's got endgame and scale progression. And there's a chance they're working on Firebolt and that's why that's not there or they're editing it or something. But as you see, if you go into endgame here, they've got starter, leveling to 100, and endgame and the pit. Again, pick an endgame build. And then you pick a leveling build. This is the best way to do it. So when you pick a leveling build, you pick an S tier one because you want to level up as fast as possible. You hit 50. You do all your Paragon. So just for the sake of it, we're going to say we come in here. I'm going to start a Sorcerer. What would I pick? I got my Lightning Spear Sorcerer. And now I want to pick my leveling build. For this would be the Firewall Sorcerer. Firewall Sorcerer is good, and it tells you, same thing. They've got pictures with the stats that you need. And in early game, they might have like one temper. I don't even see tempers on this, but sometimes they'll put one temper because, like, you know, when you get to World Tier 3, you'll have at least one temper on your gear. And so it'll show that here. And so once again, you'll come in here and you'll write this stuff down. Helm, chest, gloves, pants, boots, staff, whatever the items are, whatever. And you can do this for any character. I've done this for the last 5 seasons, and I've been able to blast every single season, get every single piece of gear that I need, and do this almost flawlessly. Now, I will say going through the items and looking through this list is not fun, but it's the best way to get the best gear that you need. That'll help you just be a lot more powerful in the game and do almost every single piece of content in the game. Now, obviously, depending on the build you pick, you might not be as strong, but if that's the build that you pick, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. But anyway, just to recap, we got our leveling, we got our end game, and how to navigate Maxroll. You don't have to go through these guides. You do not have to you don't have to do everything that, you don't have to read through everything in the guide. Now, some of this stuff is important. I'm not saying don't read. That's not what I'm saying. This is just me telling you what's the fastest way to get started on Maxroll, picking a guide, and how to just start blasting, like going through Pulverized Druid. Yes, you can read all this information, and I'm sure that it is helpful. Like some of this is like, look here, this is pulverized druid. You can look right away. Very, very easy to play. Speed farming is very good. The pit, not that great. Bossing, not that good. And you probably want to take this into account when you're picking a build, at least for me personally, because when you do a nightmare dungeon, sure you clear everything in the dungeon, that's great, but now you're spending 5 minutes trying to kill the boss, and that's not fun. But on the plus side, with the bossing being below average, you got high defense. So yes, you can sit there and blast the boss for 5 minutes, but you're not gonna die. Like you'll be just fine unless you just don't pod or you're not dodging, whatever. And they even explain the seasonal mechanic, and that's not what this video is about. But anyway, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. I just wanted to go through that and kind of walk some people in because when I first started learning how to use Maxroll, it was very overwhelming. And I know it's Diablo 4; it's not that hard to get into, at least for most people. But the barrier of entry for a lot of people that just they want to get good gear and they just don't know what to look for um, is actually pretty surprising. You'd be surprised how many people actually forget to temper their stuff. And so you see those little anvils here on the item. Those are tempers. So very important. Temper your gear. Temper, temper, temper. Right now, tempering is completely busted. And they'll probably tweak it in the future. But if you do not temper, you will not be strong. You will not be strong at all. So always temper your stuff. Write down the tempers they put. And yes, tempering is RNG, so you're not guaranteed these tempers, but it's not impossible to get them. It's not impossible to get them. So anyway, that should wrap it up. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much, and hopefully I made it pretty easy to like pick out a guide and start blasting. And again, you can do this any season. Doesn't have to be season 5. You can do this for season 4. Or I'm sorry, you can do this for season 6. And season 6 comes out, they're gonna do the exact same thing. Now, one final note I will end on is the tier list. When season 6 does roll around, the content creators and the people that work for Maxroll, they are not insiders to Blizzard, so they do not get access to every single thing in the game. And Blizzard likes to do a thing where they'll change things in their final patch notes just before the game like releases publicly, their newest season. And they do this thing called a PTR. You'll hear them say this a lot, a PTR or a public test realm. And basically, what this means is it's like a beta release before they actually drop the season. And a lot of times, the content creators or YouTubers will they'll play the PTR, they'll blast it all week, give their feedback to Blizzard, and then Blizzard will take that feedback. Now, what they do with it is not a guarantee. They might say, "Oh yeah, we'll change some of that. We'll do this. We'll do that," and then even in the final patch, there'll be some surprises to the content creators for Maxroll, and they'll come in here and go in the tier list. And like again, endgame and pit is the one that I usually look at. Like for example, like for season 5, Lightning Spear Sword, they did not know. Like this is what was predicted right here, but they didn't know it was actually going to do this well. They didn't know because of all the last minute changes that Blizzard made. And also Blizzard likes to make invisible patches where they don't tell you what's in there. They don't put everything in the patch notes. I'll just say that. So anyway, hopefully I didn't ramble too much. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, recap: pick an endgame build, then pick a leveling build. Go through it. Go through every single item in the endgame gear progression. Go through each one of these. Look and see all the first 3 main stats that you need. Reminder: you only need 2 out of 3. So if you have armor and max life here, then you can go and re-roll that final one for intelligence. And then you can temper after that. So there's a lot of RNG involved with that, right? You need to get the last roll needs to be good. It needs to match up with these. And then the tempers need to match up with what they put here too. One final thing that I forgot to mention is the Paragon board. So you'll want to and one thing that this wasn't apparent to me either is you want to start from the very starter board here. So if you can see, it says starter board, and then as you level up the Paragon, you click the arrow on the right, and it'll go to the next board. So here's a number 1, and then 2, 3. There's the next board 4. You get the idea. But then if you go to the very end, it'll show you all the board with all the Paragon. Now, if you don't have all the Altars of Lilith and you don't have all of your Renown done, then do not do this board. And I will say, when you first pull up the endgame build, by default, it's going to be on the final board. I don't know why they do that. This is just how they do it, and they show you how many Paragon points it's going to take to fill out the board. But as you can see, if you go to the last before the last notch here, right before the final board, this will show you 209. This should be all of the Paragon points without the Renown, without all the Altars of Lilith that give you that extra Paragon points that you need. So this is also very important, something that wasn't spelled out to me. And then also another thing that's really good that you can come down here and see is they give you the glyph leveling priorities, and they tell you right here, get all these to 15 first, and then you go on to 21. So obviously go through destruction and then unleash, exploit. Once you get all these to 15, then you come over here and you do them all for 21. So I just wanted to make sure that's pretty clear. And then if you really want to, you can read the rest of the guide, but you don't want to do that. That's why you're here. So hopefully that makes sense. And if you have any questions, I guess just let me know. Thank you for watching. Bye.